This call is now being recorded.
And we are on. I am joined by Mark Sisson, the creator of Mark's Daily Apple. Mark, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I'm a former endurance athlete who spent the first half of his life trying to do everything right to be healthy and fit, and wound up being decrepit and ill and sick and discouraged, at which point I vowed to figure out the secret to how it was possible for anyone to become lean, strong, fit, happy, healthy, and productive, and might I add, with the least amount of pain and suffering and sacrifice. And that's been my major goal in the last 30 years, discovering these secrets to how we can have all the things that we want, particularly with regard to accessing gene expression through diet, exercise, sun exposure, sleep, stress reduction, and things like that. My blog, Mark's Daily Apple, has become the top resource in the paleo ancestral primal world, the most visited in the world, and my books are bestsellers in that category as well. And so I continue to plow ahead looking for these hidden genetic switches that we can all turn on and get all the things that we say that we want from life.
Great, thank you. So throughout Mark's Daily Apple, a great website I visited daily. I see a lot of mentions of the 21-day challenge. Can you briefly describe what this entails for someone who is not familiar with primal living?
Sure. So, we talk a lot about how our ability to access good health comes as a result of our recognition that we can affect gene expression. We can turn on genes that build muscle, and turn on genes that increase the amount of stored body fat that we burn. We can turn off the genes that cause inflammation, and we do that through some alterations in the diet. And much of this diet revolves around what we call an ancestral eating pattern that would be emulating kind of what the hunter-gatherers for 2.5 million years of human evolution ate. Clearly, there's some adaptations that our food systems, the delivery systems of produce and whatnot in our daily life are slightly different than our going out and having to hunt and gather all this stuff. Nevertheless, there are some ways that we can eliminate certain foods that we used to eat and add in certain other foods. And typically, in order to affect this gene expression, it takes about 21 days for the body to get the signals right and to start to upregulate those enzyme systems that are involved in metabolizing and burning body fat, and kind of downregulate those systems that are involved in creating inflammation or trending toward type 2 diabetes. So we suggest that anybody take a 21-day approach and say, look, if you've read the research that we provided and you're of the opinion that this is potentially a great way to start to regain control of your own health, you can get a lot accomplished in 21 days, hence the 21-day total body transformation challenge.
So specifically, what are some of these foods that people should be eliminating and introducing into their diet?
Yeah, so some of the obvious ones that have been bandied about for a long time. You should get rid of as much sugar in your life as possible. That's not just the candies and the cookies and the treats, but also people tend to drink a lot of their sugar in the form of beverages. So if you get rid of the sodas and the pops and the sweetened beverages, and even the sweetened teas and things like that, we're pretty big on eliminating grains. Grains are a very cheap source of calories that convert to glucose pretty readily in your bloodstream. They convert to sugar pretty easily, and they contain a fair number of what we call anti-nutrients, that things that interfere with health, whether it's the gluten that so many people are familiar with that cause sensitivities, or the phytates that bind up the minerals that we otherwise want to be absorbing, other lectins that are causing potential gut inflammation and gut issues. So getting rid of the grains is a big one. And then, so it's the sugars, the grains, and then finally, it's getting rid of what we call the industrial seed oils, the soybean oils, the corn oils, the safflower, sunflower, all the pressed oils that, again, 20 years ago people were touting as heart healthy, and in fact, it turns out they're the exact opposite. So those are the things that you want to eliminate, and then we start adding back in healthy fats. So butter is a great fat, avocado, macadamia nuts, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil are examples of great fats. Fresh and grass-fed beef and meats of that, pastured animals, eggs, so eggs, meat, fish, fowl, that sort of thing. And then vegetables, which, we're a big fan of eating vegetables as well. So, again, we're in alignment with a lot of other eating strategies. It's just the elimination of the grains that's one of the big issues.
And I have to ask this. We spoke with Dave Asprey a little bit earlier, and he recommends putting both butter and coconut oil into his coffee, in a pretty fair amount of it, 2 tablespoons, I think, of each, or somewhere in that range. Is he crazy?
He's not crazy. What he's done is, Dave's a biohacker, and he hacks the body. He's a body hacker, and hey, man, any way you say that, it just doesn't sound right, does it? But he's always looking for shortcuts that actually dig even deeper into the modern science, and I think his Bulletproof coffee concept, which is loading coffee up with fat. There's some research behind that would suggest that he's not crazy. In particular, with my coffee, I just like coffee, and I don't want to load it up with a bunch of other macronutrients when I can probably enjoy those macronutrients one bite at a time, 20 chews a piece, because I really enjoy my food. So I don't see that necessarily as a way that I would choose to start my day off. But the science does not suggest that he's crazy.
Sure.
The point here is that we're trying to train our bodies to be better at burning fat, and that loading up the coffee with fat is one way to do that. It's one way to start your day with a bit of an ergogenic boost from the caffeine, and start to stimulate the processing of free fatty acids throughout the body. On the other hand, for instance, I start my day with a cup of coffee that doesn't have that much in the way of calories in it, but then I don't eat until maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I do what we call a compressed eating window. I've become so good at accessing my stored body fat that I don't need breakfast. I don't wake up hungry for breakfast. My blood sugar hasn't dropped. My mental capacity and functioning does not suffer as a result of my not having eaten breakfast. So one of the things that we do with my strategy, which is called the Primal Blueprint, is we say, look, when you're hungry, eat. When you're not hungry, don't force yourself to eat. You're good at accessing your own body fat stores, and that's a good thing.
Great. So Tech Cocktail's audience is largely entrepreneurial based. That being said, what advice would you offer to those who don't have a lot of time to be in the kitchen? They might be traveling a lot, and for those who are generally working on a tight bootstrap budget, they don't have access to maybe the grass-fed beef that the Paleo community and Primal community really touts.
On a bet, I can go into just about any restaurant in any city in this country and put together a meal that would satisfy me and satisfy sort of the basic requirements of what would be Paleo or Primal. A good example would be like, Chipotle is a great place to go get a Primal meal for not a lot of money. So it's not a question of, when I'm on the road, all bets are off. It's just a question of becoming a mindful eater and a modern forager and learning how to forage off of any menu. It starts at home, so when you're home, you can prepare those meals, and it need not be grass-fed. That's not a deal breaker if it's not grass-fed. A cut of meat that you buy at Costco that is hormone and antibiotic-free is still a much better choice than a bowl of spaghetti, for instance, on any Paleo Primal eating strategy. Which gets to this issue that it's really, these are just choices we're making on a spectrum of best to worst. And what I try to do with Mark's Daily Apple is kind of nudge people in the direction of better choices with the idea that there's no right or wrong here. It's just that you probably are going to have a better outcome. You're probably going to trend toward your ideal body composition and a better even level of energy throughout the day. And for a lot of road warriors and entrepreneurs, that energy level is huge because you don't want to show up at a meeting and be dragging ass. You want to be fresh and ready to go and on and alert and responsive. And that's one of the benefits of this eating strategy is that you can have access to that mental faculties all the time, regardless of what you've just had to, whether or not you've just eaten. You can fly across country and they don't serve a meal on the plane, and your choice is to down 8 bags of crappy pretzels, or just go, you know what? I'm confident that I'm able to access my stored body fat. Won't affect my temperament, my mood. Won't affect my productivity on the other side. I'm good to go. I mean, that's one of the great benefits of this that also gives you a certain sense of confidence.
Yeah, that's great. So even if it is a little bit more of an investment, if you're paying for the extra guacamole at Chipotle, it pays for itself because you've got a clear mental focus, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about investments, look, if you're a road warrior, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a housewife, a mother, you want to be a good father, you owe it to yourself to be healthy. You're running a small startup. You can't be unhealthy. You can't show up sick and with the flu or a head cold half the time. You owe it to yourself, to your employees, to your family, to whomever, to be the healthiest, most productive, spot-on person you can possibly be. And so when we talk about investments, if I'm going to go get $20,000 from an angel investor or $100,000 from whatever, or $5 million from a venture capital firm, my single best investment I can still make is as a person who's involved in that business to show up and be the best I can be and be the healthiest I can be. So for the extra, I don't know, $3,000 a year, you might possibly be paying over and above what you would have paid for crappy food. That's probably the single best investment you can make in your business, is you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Changing gears here a little bit, there has been some criticism of the Paleo/Primal communities that it seems to be geared mostly toward guys. How would you say the Paleo lifestyle affects women and men respectively? And are there any specific recommendations or tweaks that you would make on diet or exercise based upon sex?
Yes, there are some tweaks I'd make based upon sex. It's a fair comparison, or it's a fair analysis to suggest that it works quicker and more obviously for a greater number of men than women. But that doesn't mean that it's not working on behalf of women, because one of the first things that people really use as an evaluation is, okay, did I lose a lot of weight that I was trying to lose on this Paleo Primal eating strategy? And typically what we see is that men respond incrementally faster and maybe better. And I say maybe because half of our success stories on our site are before and after pictures of women who've lost 50 or 75 or 100 pounds. So it's not like it doesn't happen. But on balance, women and men do have some hormonal differences. Women probably, if they're, say, trying a primal strategy and they're stuck at a particular weight, they have to recognize that the body is what decides what's the ideal body composition, not your having looked at the cover of a Victoria's Secret catalog and said, okay, that's what I want, and that's ideal body composition. Ideal body composition is where your body is healthy, it doesn't get sick, it has all the energy it needs, it doesn't take a lot to maintain that weight, and in many cases that may be a few percentage points of body fat higher than the particular woman would like to see. But that's got to be okay, because we do this first for health. Once again, as an entrepreneur, as a mother, as a wife, I want first and foremost to be healthy. The looking good naked part comes later as an added benefit. So once you've got your health dialed in, And then you can stand back and go, okay, I've been doing this for a while, and my health is great, and if I'm a woman, my IBS cleared up, or my polycystic ovarian syndrome went away, or my type 2 diabetes is gone, I'm not on meds, whatever it is. Maybe the next step is, okay, now maybe I do want to drop a couple of extra percentage points of body fat. That's the point at which we say, okay, now we do have to start looking at your caloric intake, your energy usage, the types of workouts you're doing. Those are the kind of tweaks that we can make, but they're completely doable. And it does speak to the fact that at some point the distinction between men and women in the response to this paleo eating probably is somewhat dependent on the hormonal systems that define maleness and femaleness.
Very interesting. So for you, living primal goes way beyond just diet and exercise. It's an entire lifestyle. You just recently wrote a book called The Primal Connection, which goes into depth about these lifestyle elements. Could you explain some of these particular elements and why they are important?
Sure. The most profound initial changes in health come from changing what was a crappy diet into a primal diet. So that's very, very clearly the eating aspect of that is important. But beyond that, if you don't get enough sleep, for instance, you will negatively impact your progress toward being healthy and potentially negatively impact your ability to lose unwanted stored body fat. If you don't get enough sun exposure, you won't produce vitamin D in the appropriate quantities that would assist you in overcoming exposure on a daily basis to germs and foreign invaders. So vitamin D is critical to your immune system, and if you don't get enough vitamin D and you don't get enough sunlight, which is producing that, so sun exposure, sleep, the ability to control stress. I talk in the Primal Connection about the irony that we've built ourselves such a sterile world that everything is sanitized and washed and overly scrutinized for its germ content, when in fact the recipes, the DNA recipes that we each hold, expect us to come in contact with germs on a daily basis in order to train the immune system to be good at what it does, so that when a true pathological onslaught happens, the immune system knows how to handle it. So, ironically, up until a few hundred years ago, every bite of food we ever ate contained dirt, which repopulated our guts with healthy bacteria and some unhealthy bacteria, but generally it was a healthy bacteria. These 50 trillion bacteria that reside as tenants in our bodies are working on our behalf to make sure that we stay healthy and we combat disease and help us digest food. So, I suggest that people either take some form of a probiotic or cultured food on a daily basis to help repopulate that gut with these healthy bacteria, which otherwise are becoming sterile and not so much sterile as with a lack of healthy bacteria, then we have a plethora of unhealthy bacteria in our guts that are taking over and causing all manner of disease. I talk about in the book about the fact that the brain is wired to expect the sounds of nature. That the brain, there's certain wavelengths and certain decibel levels and frequencies of sounds like birds chirping and water crashing on the waves or a babbling brook that our brains are wired to hear and create a sense of calm. And yet here we are walking down a city street with jackhammers and cranes overhead and taxi cabs honking and sirens going off, and it creates this very stressful environment that we've created for ourselves, but we have to just simply acknowledge that it exists and then take steps to mitigate the damage from that sort of disconnect.
Again, because a lot of our audience is largely entrepreneurial, they're often working around the clock and they kind of volunteer themselves into this high-stress environment. Are they helpless? Are there any specific tips that you would like to offer to these people who are working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks and are probably working in busy urban centers? What would you advise?
No, it's a very there are some tips. You can install certain programs on your computer so that it's when the sun goes down naturally around you, the computer screen turns from the typical blue light, which is it's casting on you all day, to more of a yellow light, which is then still allows you to work on the computer, but does not interfere with the onset of melatonin, which is the hormone or neurotransmitter that allows you to go to sleep at night. Now, if you're pulling all-nighters, you may not want that, but there are, for people who work late into the night, say 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, that's a way to continue to do some work, and then when you do retire, go to bed, it doesn't take that long for your system to adapt and for the melatonin to start to do its job to put you to sleep in a timely fashion. One of the other things, and obviously the prototypical 80s and 90s programmer who slept under the desk 2 hours a night and then had pizza and Coca-Cola delivered so they could continue coding into the wee hours. That's just not a lifestyle that's going to lead to any health benefits. So to the extent that you can not drink the sodas and the Red Bulls and the Monsters, I mean, those are just, in my estimation, they're hideous, and they do nothing to promote health in any way, shape, or form. To the extent that you can adapt your diet to, have a bunch of healthy, high-fat snacks around, macadamia nuts, or maybe some beef jerky, or a cold chicken leg left over from a meal, a takeout food or whatever. There are ways to orchestrate this and be smart about it. That don't take a lot of time, that don't take a lot of thought, that don't take a lot of money, but still lead you in a direction of better health. And something as simple as taking a vitamin D supplement. If you can't get out because of whatever your work situation, or you're living in Chicago in the winter, take a vitamin D supplement. Take a fish oil supplement. Take a probiotic supplement, and get some of the benefits of modern technology to offset some of the detriments of modern technology that are now causing you to stay up late and work under a stressful situation.
That's actually a perfect segue to my next question. You recommend vitamin D, probiotic. Are there any supplements that you would just recommend across the board for people that maybe they're not getting through even with a primal diet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably the probiotics is the number one thing. I think that you're going to see in the next few years that gut health is going to take a huge leap in terms of its acknowledgement that and its involvement in overall physical health. And gut health, in my estimation, begins with making sure that you have a healthy gut biome, is the term that we use, which involves typically some form of probiotic supplementation. And it could be from a healthy high-fat yogurt. It could be from kefir. Could be from a number of kombucha, a number of fermented drinks. But it could also come from a simple daily capsule, a daily probiotic capsule.
And with getting someone to go to a primal lifestyle, oftentimes it's a difficult sell unless they're already battling a chronic or a very specific health issue. I know this was the case with me. I was battling chronic headaches, and I was looking for a natural solution. I turned to the primal paleo world, and it made a world of difference for me. But for a lot of people, trying to convince someone without maybe these very acute symptoms, how do you convince them to change their lifestyle? And would you say that making these changes is as beneficial to someone who isn't battling any of these negative health symptoms?
Yeah, I think that making these changes is beneficial to someone who isn't battling these things. I don't try to convince anybody. I offer a number of well-thought opinions, well-researched studies and approaches to this, but I'm long past the proselytizing and trying to convince anybody. I have people come up and say, "Hey, my friend's a vegan. Convince him to eat your way." No, I'm not interested. It's like trying to convince someone to change religions. People are very, very caught up in their in their eating and that part of their lifestyle, and they're sometimes militant about it. And so I suggest that, look, I've got a way. It's a great way. It's been researched throughout. If you are currently otherwise fit and healthy, who am I to tell you to change what you're doing to my way? If you're interested, there's all kinds of great advice over here, but it's not my job to convince you to do otherwise. Now, I will say one thing in that regard, which is I've been doing research on this for 30 years, and I changed most of my diet to reflect the research. I'd increase the amount of fats, I'd decrease the amount of sugar, I'd gotten rid of the oils. But one thing I kept in my diet far too long was grains. The whole grain was something that I sort of fought for a long time. I read a lot of research about how devastating grains were to health. And I thought, well, geez, I've been doing this for 45 years. I've been eating grains for 45 years. I think I'm a grain eater. I think I'm not one of those people. I don't have celiac. So why should I even give up grains? It doesn't make any sense. Well, my wife, who had given up grains the year prior, said, look, why don't you read all the research, you know what's going on. Why don't you do a 30-day experiment and give up grains? Well, I did, and it was life-changing. The irritable bowel syndrome I'd had my entire life that basically ran my life, that I thought was due just to stress, that went away. The arthritis I had in my fingers at the age of 45 that I thought was a normal artifact of being an aged athlete, that went away. The simple heartburn I used to get once in a while, but when I say once in a while, once a week maybe, that went away. Sinus headaches that continued after a upper respiratory tract infection went away. I got fewer upper respiratory tract infections to the point that maybe it was now, instead of 2 or 3 times a year, now it was once every 2 or 3 years. That was the number one thing that showed me that this is a eating strategy that will benefit everyone, because otherwise I looked great, I was fit looking, I was lean looking, I had all the outward manifestation of somebody who was healthy, but it wasn't until I gave up the grains that I really understood what true health looks like. And that's what really put me on this track to saying, look, you may be good now and you may feel good now, but what if you could feel better? What if you could go from good to great every day based on a few simple changes to your diet and your lifestyle?
Yeah, I think that's a compelling sell piece. So being tech cocktail, I have to ask, is alcohol acceptable on the Primal diet?
Well, the Primal Blueprint is a set of guidelines, and the concept of alcohol is one that's sort of in a gray area. The research shows, for instance, that red wine, people who drink 1 or 2 glasses of red wine a night, a couple of nights a week, tend to live longer than people who don't drink any alcohol at all. And so I sort of use that as a way of saying, well, maybe there's room for a little red wine in the Primal Blueprint, and maybe some gluten-free beer. And I've discovered a few gluten-free beers. Bear in mind that alcohol, ethanol, is still a toxin, and the body probably doesn't respond as well to ethanol as we think it does, and it's probably better on whole that you not consume any alcohol. But the Primal Blueprint was always about finding a lifestyle that was sustainable, that people could go, okay, on balance, I can eat this way for the rest of my life. If somebody's going to tell me to give up alcohol for the rest of my life and I enjoy a glass of wine once in a while, that doesn't appeal to me. If somebody says you can never have any dairy again, just on principle that cavemen before 10,000 years ago didn't have access to that, that's going to turn me off. So the Primal Blueprint is a very inclusive eating strategy that says, okay, show me what the science says we can eat. And the science does say that we can consume a little bit of red wine, and we can consume saturated fat, for instance, without causing these negative impacts that conventional wisdom has shown us over the years. The Primal Blueprint says, yeah, if you're lactose tolerant, then there are some forms of dairy that are probably not only appropriate for you, but probably health enhancing, like ghee and raw butter and raw milk and whole cream that are 100% fat, that has not been homogenized, pasteurized, and is organic. So we look for aspects of a well-rounded diet that we can include in the Primal Blueprint and say, look, this is an easy program. I mean, if you want to have a little bit of dark chocolate once in a while, it's on the program. Go for it, Just don't go overboard on it. So it's always been a very inclusive program. Now, that doesn't mean kill a bottle of wine every night. It doesn't mean that the fact that tequila has no carbs means that it's appropriate because it's a low carb, no carb drink. It just means that in moderation, these all fit into a lifestyle that we call the Primal Blueprint.
Gotcha. And my last question for you is, paleo definitely has blown up in the last year or two. It's now, I think it's the most popular diet according to the number of Google searches. And with that, of course, is going to come criticism. Most recently and notably, the book Paleo Fantasy by Marlene Zuck. Is paleo primal, is that just a fad diet? And how do you respond to some of these latest criticisms? And I know you've got probably an hour's worth of rebuttals, but maybe just some points.
I mean, basically, Zuck's book, Paleo Fantasy, is based on an erroneous set of assumptions out of the blocks. So some of the things she says in there as rebuttals are true because we never said them, as a platform in the first place. So it's kind of a ridiculous book, and I did a post on it on my site debunking it. So if you want to go to Mark's Daily Apple and look it up, there's plenty of different opportunities there to poke holes in her argument. This is not a fad diet. This is the way humans ate for 2.5 million years until the advent of agriculture. This is how our bodies our genetic recipes expect us to eat this way in order to manifest the positive gene expression that will create a lean, strong, fit, happy, healthy, productive human. So it's ironic to call this a fad diet when it's already been going on for 2.5 million years.
Not to show bias, but I agree. Mark, thank you so much for your time. Where could someone go if they wanted to learn more about you and what you have to offer?
Sure, marksdailyapple.com. We've got a lot of free information there, a 92-page ebook on called Primal Blueprint Fitness. Lots of startup things, Primal Blueprint 101 that you can download there for free. My book is called The Primal Blueprint. It's available at every bookseller in the world. And that's where I would start and encourage people to just be open-minded and read a few paragraphs and then see if it resonates with you.
Great. Mark, a lot of really helpful information. I know our viewers are going to get a lot of great insights out of this interview. So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.